Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Manual J webinar today. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be sent out to all attendees. If there are any issues with audio, please write me in the chat. My name is Erica DeLello and I'm a project manager for Noresco. This series is sponsored by the Colorado Energy Office with training materials created by Colorado Code Consulting. We've been working with the Colorado Energy Office to provide trainings just like this one. Here we have a list of the trainings that we offer in this series over the next few months. There will be a link in a follow-up email if you'd like to register for any other webinars. As you can see, we've got Manual J today, Manual S, and then Manual D over the next couple weeks. So, and then also we offer tailored group trainings or technical assistance for jurisdictions that are updating I-codes. As you can see from these flyers here, we've got a variety of things where you can just shoot me an email if you're interested in either of these. In addition to the code adoption, we've put together a code adoption toolkit that reviews cost implications, changing of code cycles, benefits, and a lot of other compliance resources, including a troubleshooting guide that we've created that covers I-code conflicts, alignments, clarifications, and paths of compliance. Both of these resources can be accessed through the Colorado Energy Office's website. And so throughout the webinar, we do want to encourage questions. So please use the Q&A function, and I'll let a presenter know at the end of the presentation. The chat window can also be used to chat among participants, but please use the Q&A if you'd like to ask a question. There is also the ability to raise your hand and ask a question, and I can unmute you at the end of the presentation. Lastly, there will be a survey window that pops up following the webinar. Please take a minute to provide feedback so we can continue to improve on these webinars. Today's presenter is Gil Rossmiller, and he has been in the construction industry for over 40 years. So he's got a lot of experience under his belt. He was the chief building official for Parker, Colorado from 2003 to 2016. He served on the IRC and plumbing and mechanical code development committee for the 2019 and 2009 and 2012 editions, and on the commercial energy code development committee for the 2015 and 2018 codes. Currently, he is on the Residential Energy Code Committee Development Committee for IACC 2021. So he's got all the knowledge across the board. If you've got a question, he can answer it, hopefully. Sorry, Gil. But with that, I'll let him take it from here.
All righty then. So we'll share my screen. So in theory, you see the Manual J. Am I good?
You are good.
In 4. All right. So we will get started with what's going on. So Erica did a great job of introducing what I did and who I am. And so, yes, so you may ask questions any time you wish, and ask me anything you would like. If I don't know the answer, I will say, I don't know. Yes, I will say that. And find out the answer to the question, because if I don't know, I know someone who does know. How's that? Okay. All right. So I'll continue on, turn the little video off here so we're not seeing me and this at the same time, and move on. All right. So today it's all about Manual J. Manual J is all about heat gain and heat loss calculation. That's all it does. Okay, nothing else. I don't care how I'm heating or I'm cooling the building. Don't care. I'm starting with this Manual J. If I don't know my heat gain, meaning how big of an air conditioner do I need, and I don't know my heat loss, meaning how much of a heater do I need, I don't know what I'm doing. So it all starts with Manual J, which is why it's about Manual J today. Then we'll be talking about Manual S. Now that we know my heat gain and heat loss, Manual S is all about equipment selection. And it's the process to select the proper sized equipment that has the capacity to meet our calculated loads. Okay. Finally, we'll get to duct systems. So if we're actually running duct work that requires CFMs per room based on my calculated load, based on the equipment that I've selected, then I can design my duct work. This is the process. There is no other process. You got to do J, you got to do S, and you got to do D. Period. Okay? First thing is, why design? Why are we designing? I mean, come on. I mean, the code's required it for a long time. So here's a question, answer this to yourself. When, in the international codes, was the requirement for a manual J calculation within the code? We're talking about the international codes. We won't go past that. That was the 2000. It was the 2000 IRC. So 20 years ago, this is required. And 20 years ago, everybody should have been doing it. Nobody was. I can tell you, there were very, very few that were. Okay? But that's when it was. Okay. So we've got some timing issues here. Hopefully, I'll be able to control that a little bit. Oversized equipment, right? Why are we doing it? Well, higher upfront cost, undersized equipment, right? I don't think we have that issue. Short cycling. Does your air conditioner freeze up? That coil freeze? That means your air conditioner is too big and you're not moving enough air. Okay. Yeah. Equipment that's sized properly, right? More economically, right? Do diligent and efficiently. Probably the biggest reason here is here for your mechanical contractors. For those of you that are contractors that are listening, I would rather go into I go into court and you're saying, well, Your Honor, how did you design your system, he asks, or she asks, and you say, well, it's because it's the way I've always done it. It's worked just fine. Well, in this case, you're getting sued because it clearly did not. Or would you rather be able to say, well, actually, I did a very detailed manual J calculation that gave me my calculated heat gain and my calculated heat loss. Knowing that, I was putting in a forced air, a gas-fired forced air system. I was able to then use manual S to calculate and decide which of my furnaces or my gas-fired furnaces had the capacity to meet my calculated loads. Now, because this was a forced air system, I was then able to use manual D to design my ductwork, knowing that I had my total equivalent length, all my static losses, and ended up with a friction rate that was between the 0.06 and the 0.18. So at least had a chance of actually performing. I don't know, what sounds better, guys? I've always done it this way, or this is how it's done. Yeah. This is how it's done sounds a whole lot more credible, yes. So equipment size is always 30 to 50% smaller once you start doing it. And clearly, better than the rule of thumb, right? There really isn't one. And it reduces operating costs, right? If I don't need 150,000 BTU furnace and I can put in 60,000, you think that's like saving? You bet, you bet, right? So what's next? Oh yeah, here's the rule of thumb. So we've all seen this. You stand across the street and you slide the template on the subject house until the house fits into the cutout section and install air conditioner as indicated. So you've seen this, right? So if it fits here, here, or here, then this goes up to half-ton increments of 5 ton. Yeah, no. Yeah, clearly we're not doing that. Yeah, it doesn't work. Never has. Especially those that you are in altitude. Not good. All right. So what we're going to try to do is I'm going to use WriteSoft and Elite, two of the softwares that we kind of see mostly. and go through some of the highlights of what we should be looking for on plan review. I mean, we've only got about an hour here, so it'll be fairly quick, but you get some of these design parameters down, at least you're going to have a manual J heat gain and heat loss calculation that's at least reasonably correct, right? So first thing we're looking at clearly is where are we at? Yeah, well, this one happens to be for Denver. So your town should be showing up there, right? A lot of these data is within the software itself, sometimes not, but we're looking. Okay, so we're in Denver. So that first one here, if I didn't say, that is RightSoft, as it says it right there on the slide. Huh? And this is Elite. So this would be the Elite software. The format is, believe me, completely different, but it gives you the same information. Okay, so you're looking at the reference city. So is every single city in the planet within the software? No, it is not. Right? The jurisdictions may set what some design temperatures are. Otherwise, you may use a metropolitan area or something that is within the software that's close. So for instance, Parker was not in the database, right? But Denver was close enough. Yeah, so we're good. So you can certainly do that. Jurisdictions may direct you to something that was in the software that they accept. Okay. Elevation and orientation. Okay, we got to make sure that's relatively correct. Production homes, we're going to actually, there's a way within the software that they can actually hit a button and it flips the house once they've drawn the house in the software. And it flips it the worst possible direction. It's going to be the highest, essentially the highest air conditioning load, because it's the solar gains, sun through the windows, that are the big difference there. And then clearly custom homes, we already know which way the house faces, yes? Production homes, it's not particularly easy because they're going to say, well, where's the front of the house? They're going to say toward the street. Well, which way does the street run? Yeah. Yeah, but there's a way that we can deal with that. And when we get into Manual S and how that equipment is picked, or I may have it today, but there's a way that we can show that, and I'll show you how it's done. Okay. So elevation. So elevation, right? Mile High City, 5,300 feet. This one's saying we're in Denver. Oh, here I do. Yeah. So here is a report that you can get, and some of the designers don't always include it, so you can ask for it. Saying, hey, I want the loads, this is RightSoft, or multiple orientation report, please, okay? What this does is this grayed out area is showing you which way it faces, okay? So in this particular case, this happened to be a production home, or the practice one that I ran, and flipped it the worst possible way once it was designed, and it was headed south. Front door faces south. That was the worst, okay? So the beauty of this is, how do you know when you need to pick a second system? When is there too much of a difference? We will learn that next week. There's the teaser. Yes, next week. It has to do with this table, but I won't tell you the answer yet because, you know, I'm trying to tease you to come back next week. But this is the one where it says, hey, door faces south, and these are the highest loads. Question is when do we know when we have to have two systems, you know, two different size systems? All right. And here's the same thing. We've got the door faces southeast in this particular case. Here's our elevation, and this is Elite. And here's another screenshot from Elite saying, you know, this is the highest gain here. So this is what their quote rotational report looks like. Okay, gives you the same information. And these are two different houses. So don't start saying, why are the loads different? Because it's two entirely different houses. These are not the same place in any way, shape, or form. Okay. Outside design dry bulb, the temperatures are correct. Oh, what in the world is that? What are you talking about? Oh, in the jurisdiction, they may have amended it. They have every opportunity to do that. Okay? Now that's okay, perfectly acceptable. They just need to make it known. Oh, yes, it's the sling psychrometer. Isn't this exciting stuff? Yes. All right, so what we're talking about here is what's the whole wet bulb, dry bulb thing, right? What's that all about, okay? Well, this old style sling psychrometer. They've got digital ones that make this thing look crazy now, but this is pretty basic stuff, okay? What we have are two regular old thermometers, okay? That's what we got, two regular old thermometers. Then one of these bad boys has a little cotton sock on it, okay? Well, what you do is you get this cotton sock wet. Yes, you get it wet. And then you take this little handle and you start slinging this thing around, okay? Well, what you get then are two different temperatures. You get a dry bulb temperature, which would be this thermometer here, and that's the one that's just giving us the temperature of the room. Yes, just like the thermometer sitting on the wall. What's happening to this one though? Well, in your climate, it's very dry, is it not? This now, the sock is drying out. The water is evaporating. When the water evaporates, it gets colder. So now we have what we call a dry bulb temperature and a wet bulb temperature. Now this starts to become important when we pick our air conditioning equipment, but we're going to be talking about latent loads and wet bulbs and dry bulbs and coincident wet bulbs. This is what it all comes back to. If I were to go spin this thing in certain conditions, I'm going to have a dry bulb and a wet bulb. If I know two properties of air, I can tell you anything about it. I can also tell you what the relative humidity is in the room or in the space or outside, if I know a wet bulb and a dry bulb. Don't know if I've got examples of that or not. Yeah, don't. But what it is the difference between the wet bulb and the dry bulb is called the depression. And there's a little chart that says, I don't know the picture of, but it tells you what the relative humidity is. And I can tell you right now that if I were to spin that in Denver and we were getting our coincident wet bulb, I think this is the slide that talks about it, yes. Coincident wet bulb represents the average wet bulb temperature expected to coexist with the 1% dry bulb temperature. So what that means is that if, let's see, what are we doing here? Yeah, coincident wet bulb. So if I was outside and I was in Denver, Colorado, this is just a quick screenshot from table 1A within Manual J that gives you what the temperatures, design temperature should be. Understand that the last time this thing was printed, I gotta make sure that, I don't know why this is timing here. Hopefully that'll stop. The last time this book was printed back, I think it was 2006, so it's old. And so you could actually get more up-to-date weather data could very well be in the software itself, because the software contains it for the different cities, or the jurisdiction can set it. Anyway, I was trying to explain coincident wet bulb. So if it were 90 degrees outside, okay, and I was spinning my sling psychrometer outside, my dry bulb would say 90 degrees and my wet bulb would say 59. That's what that means, okay? Not too awful bad, right? Pretty simple, as long as you understand what that is. So this is important because the lower this number, The lower that number is relative to this number means the drier it is, very dry. Then we have indoor design conditions. Again, this is something the jurisdiction could amend if they wish, but we are all promoting that we're using 70-degree dry bulb interior for winter. Excuse me, 75-degree dry bulb at 50% relative humidity. Yeah, see, it's advancing. I am so sorry what that's all about. Need to fix that. At 50% relative humidity, that is comfort. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's what ASHRAE and ACA and People Waste Murder and I've decided years ago. And this is psychrometrically, so there's a psychrometric chart that you can look at. I don't have a picture of it, but that's about a 62-degree wet bulb. So if I was outside spinning my sling psychrometer and it was 75 degrees out, at 50% relative humidity, my wet bulb would be 62 degrees. This is physics, guys. You can't deal with it any other way. We're doing 70 degrees at 30% relative humidity for the winter. Now, people might want their house more than 30%. Humidifying during the winter can be dangerous. Okay? ACA and ASHRAE have recommended, and I require, that we never design for any more than 30%. It does add a heat load, okay? It does add a heat load. So that we need to, we'll look at that here in a minute, but it does. So I don't let them design for any more than 30%, okay? Oh, here's that table I was talking about. Here it is. Yeah, this 31 degree, yeah, so 90 minus is that 31 degree depression, right? So at 90 degrees, 31 degree delta T, 11% humidity. That's just a little table that comes with the sling psychrometer. It's obviously much larger than that, but that's how that works. Okay, so then we just need to make certain that our heating dry bulb, so this is the outside design. So outdoor, right? -3, I'd say we're good. -3, and the elite, we're good. Yeah, we can do that. And here's this is what the code says, right? So it actually gives us a minimum and a maximum. So we can do a maximum of 72 degrees for heating. I just recommended and actually require that we do 70. They could do 72 per code, and a minimum of 75 for cooling, so that matches. So what you don't want to see is that we're going to design for 65-degree cooling inside. Wrong. Well, these people like it really cold during the winter or during the summer. Too bad. Figure it out. Could they get it down to 65 degrees? Well, they probably could. They ran it long enough. But we're not building refrigerators or freezers here, people. We're designing houses. So again, here, indoor, right, 70, 75. All this is the delta T is just a difference between -3 and 70. I've got to create 73 degrees worth of heat at my outside design. Yes, to maintain 70 degrees. Then we look at the same thing for cooling. Do the same math. Here it is, right? 70, 75, good to go. Oh, this is a good book. I'm glad I got this slide in. This is good. This Manual RS, just go to the ACA, the Air Conditioning Contractors of America. They are a standard writing organization and also a contractor organization. That produces all these wonderful standards and books. This book is not expensive. This is actually a really great, good, basic, easy read book on how things work. How does an air conditioner work? How does a forced air furnace work? How does a heat pump work? How does how does it work? Hey, there's a whole chapter on comfort. What is comfort? Want to have that conversation? No, we're not going to do it. But awesome book, good basic stuff. And if it's like I say, if I can understand it and read it, pretty much anybody can. Okay. And it's not expensive. I think it's worth the jurisdiction to get it. If you're a jurisdiction or cooling or even a general contractor, it kind of brings things into perspective. It also has in here things like what's the expectation of a single zone constant volume system. What I just said in layman's terms is I got a single furnace in the basement and it's either on or it's off. It heats the whole house or it doesn't heat anything, or it cools the whole house or it doesn't heat anything. One appliance and it's always on, it's either on or it's off, no zones, no nothing. Okay. What is the expectation if I'm air conditioning the house? And where's the thermostat sitting on the single two-story house? It's going to sit on the main floor. Yes, yes. And I set that at 75 degrees in the summer. Yes. When's that furnace? When is that air conditioner going to turn off? It's going to turn off when the first floor reaches 75 degrees. What's the temperature of the second floor? Well, I'm telling you right now, it ain't anywhere near 75 degrees because the system is doing exactly what you told it to do. There could be up to a 10-degree difference. It could be 85 degrees on the second floor. Think people like that? No, that's why this book says, yeah, you probably think about zoning. Code doesn't require it. Code doesn't require cooling at all, does it? Only heating. Yeah, if you got an air conditioning option, builders, you're going to install an air conditioner? Oh yeah, well then you're going to design for it because usually that requires the most air. Okay, relative humidity here, we talked a little bit about that. 30% for heating, 50% for cooling. This is what it should be set at. Really no exceptions to that. I mean, the jurisdiction could overrule that. They could, have a code that says you're going to use this, but that's not what I would recommend. Here again, 30 to 50%, right? In our elite. This is another important piece, okay? This is moisture difference, they call it grains per pound. What this is saying is, and it's the cooling one that's the big deal. What this is saying is what is the air like on the outside relative to the air of what I'd like on the inside? So in Colorado, generally speaking, it is very dry. Yes, we just had that conversation. Very low humidity. On a design day, it's 11%, right? So if anything, we want to add moisture, if anything, right? That's what folks are gonna want. This number here is a very big determining factor of the latent loads in the house, right? The latent loads are moisture. That's the moisture in the air. How much moisture do we have to get rid of? I'm currently broadcasting from the lovely state of Minnesota. It's a lot wetter here in Minnesota. We actually have a latent load, right? Colorado will not, generally speaking, have a calculated latent load in any way, shape, or form, okay? There may be some times when there's a very small one, like very, very small, 200 or 300 BTU. This is a number that could be monkeyed with by designers to make the system bigger, seem like it's bigger because they're not comfortable with the sizes they're coming up with, okay? This is gonna be a very large negative number. The key is that number should always be negative. And it, depending on the climate, weather software and the weather data that the particular software has loaded in at the time, that could vary from anywhere from a -25 to a -40 and 45. Okay, it just needs to be negative. I should never see a positive numbers like I do in heating. It should always be negative in cooling. Okay, these are pointers. These are biggies. Here again, on the elite, showing a big, so this one happens to be minus 37, and it's Denver, right? So the fact that they don't match, not a big deal. The fact is that it's negative, okay? All right, so construction description. So what we've gone through here is a reasonably quick check. That as long as we've got our design parameters correct, outdoor design temperature, indoor design temperature, yes, elevation, location on the planet, Denver, wherever it is you're at, okay? I've got our coincident wet bulb is reasonably correct, and our grains difference. As long as those are correct, we've at least started in the right spot. Okay. Then, if we've started in the correct spot, we've got our design parameters at least reasonably close or right on. We need to say, okay, well, how did they design the house? What kind of insulation did they use? What were their U values? What kind of windows? And what was the area? Yeah. So the way these softwares work is you can physically draw the building in the software. You draw it in the software. Okay, so it knows. So here we just have what we call a component constructions report, and Wrightsoft I think does a great job. I prefer, this is the software I own, and the one that I prefer just because I like the format of their reports and just how it works. Others feel that Elite's better. They both work. They both do the same. It's just a matter of personal preference, right? So what it does is it actually spells out what we're doing, right? So manual J, if I went into manual J, I could look up what a 12E-0SW is. And it would tell me that it's a framed wall with a wood exterior. It's got a half-inch wood sheathing, R19 cavity insulation with half-inch gypsum board, interior finish, and it's a 2x6 wall. Yeah, so unless you've got the book, you would never know what that is. Yeah. What it's done here is given us the areas that it is. So if this is just a very simple, one-story ranch with a full basement. So it's just saying that on the outside, I've got about 1,100 square feet of wall area. This just happens to be the U value once it's calculated with all the siding, the gyp, and all of that. This is going to be the cavity insulation. That's all you're going to see. If there's any insulation whatsoever, okay? We're not going to get into the heat transfer modifiers, the cooling transfer modifiers very quickly. These are simply the math that's behind the scenes. That's what it does. We're not going to get into the math to show you how that's accomplished because that would take the next afternoon, but we won't go there. All we need to know is they've got a reasonable amount of square footage. That's correct. You're never going to see exact square footage. Never, never, never. You and I will take the takeoffs of the same exact house and we'll have two different answers. What we're looking for here is, did they forget an entire floor, right? If you don't draw these things in the software correctly, it might be a two-story building, but I'm only seeing 1 story of exterior wall. Oops. Yeah. I'm looking for big stuff. I mean, 100 square feet here and there, what's the big deal? 1,000 square feet? Oops. Yeah. Yeah. And does they have the right cavity? So did the construction plan say it's an R19 wall? Good. Then we've got below grade wall. Light, dry soil, depending on your soil. Got different choices. Looks like they framed the inside out. They've got furring, right? 2x4 interior frame. Concrete wall. I put in R13 cavity insulation. My wall's 8 inches thick, and I got gypsum board on the inside. Pretty nice, huh? Spells it out really nice for you. Again, just some square footages to deal with. Then, what is the R value? What did they put in? Right? Just looking some checks here. Is it even the correct? I mean, do the plans say, well, actually, I'm actually using blown in batt. I'm going to get like an R25 wall. Or I'm using foam. I'm getting more closer to an R30 wall. Yeah, you just want to make sure that these numbers should match. R values and the U values for windows should match. Ceilings, same thing. Okay. Here we've got, this one happens to be an R38, about 1,800 square feet, looks about right. And again, just spells out exactly what you've done. It's really nice. Elite, sort of, kind of does it. Not as good as I'd like to see it. A lot of times they're typing this in themselves. Isn't horribly bad. But again, the windows, these are something they must have created. Not telling us much at all, right? 0.37 and a 0.28. Well, what's what? What's the U value and what's the solar heat gain? There's other reports, I think, that make it a little bit better. Let's see, do I have another? Yeah. So you get some detailed construction pieces room by room by room, okay? And actually this is getting a little bit better. You know, it's, you know, R18 they're calling it, and getting the U value for it. Again, I just don't, I personally don't like the format Elite because it's a little harder to pick out the information. Here I'm just giving you a quick example of a, you know, R2 difference between an R19 and an R21 wall, right? So if they put in an R19, but it was really a 21 on the plan, we got a heat gain or heat loss of what, 32.4, and the R21 is 32.2. So what, 250 BTU, but 240 BTU difference? It's a difference, it's smaller, there's no doubt. And the same thing with your cooling equipment size. It's a couple of hundred BTU, but it's not the end of the planet, right? If this was the only thing wrong, I don't know, I might tell them to take it back and just say, I know, even if you put the R21 in, it's not gonna make much of a difference. It's not gonna change your equipment size because you're already putting in the smallest anything anybody's got, okay? It will change your CFM flows to rooms by maybe 1 or 2 CFM, maybe, and it may not make a difference at all, okay? So just showing you that an R2 and the exterior walls, and at least in this particular house, wasn't enough to lose any sleep over, okay? Just, you know, because people ask, you know, what's the difference? Well, there it is. In this house, it wasn't much of anything. Construct, yeah, has the correct glazing's U factor, solar heat gain coefficient, and window areas. And one of the hardest things to get them to do is this right here. Credit has been taken for overhangs, shades, blinds, and screens. Big deal, okay? Big deal. Windows should look like this. U value, solar heat gain coefficient, vinyl clad low E windows, NFRC rated, solar heat gain of 0.4, 50% blinds, 45 degrees, medium color, and the insect screen with, so this one has a 2-foot overhang with a 3-foot window height and a 2-foot separation. And what that means is that the window's 3 feet tall, yes, and from the top of the window to the bottom of the soffit is 2 feet, okay? This is a big deal because solar gains are the largest load for air conditioning. Solar gains meaning the sun shining through the windows, okay? It is a gigantic gain. It is by far the largest, okay? Well over 50% of the load, right? Many times it's over 50%. I don't get too bent out of shape about getting every single window with the exact overhang. You know, we're going to have typical overhangs and some that will never have any overhang. So if I got a 2-story building, the first floor windows, unless it's underneath the front porch, won't have an overhang at all, right? And others will be completely shaded. I like to see somebody have made some attempt at an overhang. There are going to be windows that don't have any screens or shades or anything on it. Sure, well, they want to see the mountains, it's, you know, to the west, or it's got a beautiful valley, whatever. But it's not going to be every single house or every single window in the house. I mean, I have had a heck of a time in the last couple of weeks. It seems like I said, well, I'm missing the blinds and the screens. I mean, I understand that there'll be some windows that don't have any of it, your picture windows. I said, but not every single window will be like that. The response will be, yeah, no screens or blinds. You know what my response is? My response lately has been, I want a letter from the homeowner stating that this house will never have any blinds, screens, or curtains, drapes, shades of any kind on any window. You give me that and I'll believe you. There are those that have that. I'm not disagreeing, but it is certainly not typical, right? Yeah, they need to take to advantage. And that's one thing that they'll leave out just to increase the air conditioning size to give them a little comfort level. Anyway, here's the U factor. 0.34 is this particular one. The plan should say 0.34. Yeah. Let's see, we'll get to you, Scott. I see your question. We'll get to your, I can just answer it now. Scott says, so what type of overhang for east-west windows? Well, depends on what their design is. The east-west windows may not have any overhangs. The code doesn't specify anything. Code doesn't say you have to do any overhangs whatsoever. What we're trying to do is that if they have overhangs and they are shaded, you need to include it in the design. Okay, that's what you need to do. If you're trying to do, let's see, what am I trying to, passive home, like a solar passive, am I saying that correct? This would not be the software that you're using. This is not what you would use, okay? Because that's a completely different design. All we're trying to do here is clearly, yeah, shading for the east and west, yeah. There's going to be times when, let's say it's the west facing window and you don't have any shades on it, that room, and I think we'll get into it, will have an excursion of you could not believe. I've had rooms that have required a ton of air conditioning just because of the windows, and only during a certain part of the day, right? But the code doesn't talk about that, but designers should be aware of it. And I'll show you where that shows up, okay? So no requirements for it. For overhangs, but if you've got them, you need to take advantage of them, and same thing with blinds and shades. Here, this is another place where I think that Elite doesn't do a great job. It starts to get down here where we get in the U value in the detailed room loads. It starts to tell us what the U value is. This must be an old one at 0.37, or they've taken another path for compliance, trade-off somehow or another. Correct attic insulation, same type of thing, right? R38 here, no problem. R38, that's what the plans say, that's what it should be. Here, let's see where we at. Oh, yeah, here, you see, it's just a different format. I mean, it gives us an area, the sensible loss, gain, and all that kind of stuff, but you have to look in the description to get where the insulation is, or go to that room-to-room piece. Here, there'll be many, many pages of this out of the Elite software, and you don't, it's great if the designer's trying to find a mistake someplace. But it's good for you because it's got this one piece here, the entire house, or the entire zone. We're going to take a close-up shot of this stuff right down here at the bottom. Okay. So what we have is this entire house, and it starts to go through. Remember the 12S, FOSW. So these are all the different construction pieces, right? Windows, doors, ceilings, that type of thing. If we look at the bottom, and so this is that entire house column, we've got this excursion, which I will explain what that is here, hopefully in the next few slides. The big thing here is it tells us two things. How many people are in the house? This one's got 5. This is another place where they'll start to say, it seems awful low loads. We're going to have to put more people in. Let's put more people in. One person per bedroom plus one. That is the rule. Yeah. If they're designing for the party, I've had people put in, well, we've got 65 people in a 2-bedroom home. No, you have 3. Now that you've designed the system for the party, tell me what you're using for every day. Yeah. So the number of people is what they'll do. The other place is this one right here. Appliances. And you should take advantage of that. Designers absolutely need to. These are things like stoves, refrigerators, entertainment centers. Yeah. Right? Dishwashers. Yeah. Things that produce heat and moisture. Right? Dishwashers, supposed to put any moisture in the house? Yeah. How about boiling water and cooking and showers and all kinds of things? And so it's important that that's included. 2,400 is a pretty standard number for just a simple kind of a production, middle of the road production home. You start to get into fancy schmancy places that it might be double that. I had one come in the other day. It was it was about a ton and a half, ton and 3/4 of that. It was like 12, 13, 14,000 BTU. It was like 10 times what I would normally see. My comment was, please show your calculation for that. And he certainly did, and included everything except, the additional kitchen sink. It was clearly something that he was trying to make it bigger than it needed to be. Okay, so those are the 2 important pieces: number of people and appliances. All right. They got a TV room, they should include it. Here, this one included humidification. A little bit. Oh yeah, here's the number of people in this particular design. Okay, and here's the equipment number here. So they actually just put in 1,200. That's a little bit low. 24 is probably closer to reality for that, but it's a designer choice, right? We're just wanting to make sure they don't go overboard on it. And so here, this is something that the computer software does. This is very difficult, if not impossible, to do by hand. Okay. Adequate exposure diversity. What this does is it gives us a few things. This right here is telling us what the solar gains are during the day. Okay? This is the average solar gain through the day. This line is 30% above, oopsie, yeah, I'm gonna have to deal with that. This line is 30% above the average. Now it looks like it's still taking over. I'll see if I can't stop that. And anything that's above this little arrow here, see, it's still doing it. I don't know what the heck. This is considered the excursion. Okay, it's what's over here. The only time we need to be worried about it. So as far as plan reviewers and code folks, we don't care about this. What I'm telling you is that I'm just explaining what this is so you're not confused. We don't care. Code doesn't care. What this does do is tell us what the excursion is and where it is. And this is important for designers. See my little arrow pointing down here, 1,808 BTUs, but that's the total excursion for the entire house over the entire day. So between the 1,600 and 1,700 hours, right? Clearly in the afternoon, clearly on one side of the house. Now, this helps to the designer, okay? And this is how it helps them. So here, we're looking at the bottom of that page once again, yes? is the AED excursion. Here it is for the total house. And here it is for that particular room. So in this particular case, it was the living room. So in the living room, it has this excursion of just a small amount, only 526 BTUs, not much to lose any sleep over, okay? To a designer, when you start hitting thousands of BTU, like I said, there's rooms with, solid wall of glass facing west. That number there would be 12,000 BTU. That's a ton of air conditioning. That's the excursion, and it only gets that hot for that amount of time during the day, right? So it helps designers tremendously to say, you know what? I know you like the view, and I know that, that there's lots of glass and stuff. So is the expectation, homeowner, that you're going to be able to sit there and look at the sunset and not boil, not fry? If so, we're going to have to add another system in there to keep you cool. Otherwise, you're going to have to, we would highly recommend that you put some pretty heavy shades on that bad boy and pull them. Otherwise, the system won't keep up. It just won't, right? You don't have a separate zone or a separate system that's feeding that, they're going to be too hot. So that's legitimate. That's not an illegitimate design. That's certainly a legitimate design, but this is how they know. So it's something that we don't care about. We only care that they're getting the correct size. Now, once they get distribution, right? We talk about a lot about that. What do we got here? I think we're getting pretty close to the, oh yeah, that's just my arrows. Pretty close to the end here. So the 1800 BTU. So I lost my train of thought. I'm blathering. So the idea behind this whole adequate exposure diversity is something that the software does. Can't do it by hand, and we don't care. But the designer had better. They better take a look at that. If I look at it and I see something that's extreme, if I look down here and I see something like 8 or 9 or 10, 12, 13,000 BTU, I'm looking to see if there's any room that's the majority of that, because that's a lot. This is this is a real typical, production home that does that. Otherwise, I blazed through that. Gosh, 10 minutes? Holy moly. I talked way too fast. So this is me. I believe now, if we've got any architects that want AIA credit, so I'm pretty sure we have LS and HSW credits available for this class. You will need to send me an email, okay? Because I will need to post that for you to your account. So just send me an email here, gailrossmeyer@coloradocode.net, and include your AIA number. And I will post that to your account. Otherwise, Erica will be sending a certificate to those of you that need ICC CEUs, and I'll be getting her my little numbers for that. And I believe it's the same for the Manual S and Manual D also. Other than that, if we've got anybody else that needs anything or questions, well, we got a bunch of really good folks on here. Yeah, Scott. Hey, Mr. Orlson. I wonder if did Scott learn anything? Scott's really good.
We do have a question. I believe. Oh, here we go. How can we review this presentation later? I'm putting together this recording, and then Gil, if you wouldn't mind sending me a PDF of the presentation, I'll also post that to the site. That's
Sure.
included in the follow-up email.
Yep.
And then we have Robbie Schwartz here. He's raised his hand. I'm going to go ahead and allow him to talk.
Hey, Robbie.
Yeah. Okay, Robbie, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great. Thanks. Thanks so much. Nice presentation, Gil, and thank you for that. I was curious if the same information is in the different software Elite, and if you have any guidance for how to find it in Elite, because it's, as you said, it's set up pretty differently.
It is set up differently, but all that information is definitely in there. It is just not nearly in the same spot, right? So it's all there, and it could be that, and those are relatively old reports. They may have updated their report so it actually gets more data in there. The key is that I find myself asking for the report. So if they don't have, if you don't see something in there that you specifically are looking for, my comment would be, I'm looking for X. Can you provide a report that shows me that this was included in that, in your calculation? Because in Writesoft, I could give them the name of the report because, you know, I've got the software. I don't have Elite. So I couldn't tell them the name of the report or, you know, how to find it. But I've had, there are only a very few softwares that are ACCA approved, ACCA accepted softwares. You go to the ACCA website and you can look up the approved softwares. Because there's plenty of Manual J things online that are free and that you can do, but they're not ACCA approved. One, I cannot remember one I got, and it was just, it had almost no information. It said, this is a total gain, this is a total loss, and we did it in Denver. Well, I said, well, I need to see, you know, your construction conscription report. I need to see a rotational report. I need to show, you know, what you use for indoor, outdoor air temperatures, all of it, right? I need to see room to room flows. I need to see CFM. And the response was, well, this software doesn't give me any of those reports. Well, then you can't use it. Sorry, it's not ACCA approved in any way, shape, or form. So I don't have a great answer for that, Robbie. It's just that if you don't see something that you need to know and you can't find it, I just simply ask because I don't know where to find it either. Right? It looks like Scott. Yeah, great. Thanks, Robbie. Good guy. Good guy. Robbie's a great guy. You need any help with your stuff? Robbie's very good at what he does. Scott's Mr. Mills said, "Do you have an MJ software that you prefer?" Yeah, I like the Writesoft, but that doesn't mean anything, right? It's the most expensive. I think still think that's true. I just found it, I just like the way it worked, right? I like the inputs. I like how the reports that it puts it out. I like how it works. I think that you need to try it. All of these softwares, I'm pretty sure, I know you can with Writesoft, and I'm pretty sure you can with Elite, is you can download the entire piece in a practice, you know, for a couple of weeks or something, so you can actually start to practice with it and see if you like it. Probably the hardest thing with the Writesoft is trying to get the ducks drawn. That can be difficult. That takes some time. That takes some real talent to start to draw the ductwork within there. And it's really easy to disconnect them at one end or the other. But once you get the hang of it, it's like any piece of software and know how it works, you can deal with it. But that's the one I prefer, but that doesn't mean much of anything. There's plenty of people that use Elite and love it. Plenty of people that use the Writesoft and love it and would never change. So it's basically personal preference because they all give you the same answer. Meaning, I suspect though, if you were to run one house, if you were the same designer and did it once in Writesoft and once in Elite, the answers wouldn't be identical. They would be off a little bit, but certainly not off more than what you would normally expect, you know, maybe 5% or something. But I've never actually tried that. That may be fascinating to do it. But what else? Anybody else? I'll sit here and talk forever. I guess one last thought. This is an intense process. And for those of you that aren't doing it yet, jurisdictions that aren't requiring it yet, you need to, but before you start down on this path, you have got to make certain that you are very comfortable that you are requiring, and your field inspectors and your builder folks, your contractors are all up to speed on the building thermal envelope, making sure your air barriers are there, your insulation is installed correctly, your water resistant barrier, all the flashing, the roofing, the interconnections, all of it. Because if you do not have a thermal envelope that's performing, none of this stuff will work, right? If the building rots from the inside out, who cares how well the ductwork's designed, okay? The reason this is ultimately important is because this is how energy is saved. Yes? Yes. Yeah, we can put R60 in the walls and R900 in the attic and windows that are a 0.02 U value. Because all it does is do what? It makes the equipment that heats and cools it smaller. That is how we save energy. So, word to the wise, do not force this down anybody's throat until after you got a thermal envelope, because you can't do it. That's why why was the room over the garage? It was uncomfortable because the thermal envelope was less than adequate. It had plenty of air going to it. We had equipment that was twice the size. All right. The equipment was big enough, it's just that the thermal envelope was less than good. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. So anyway, you got all that stuff under your belt, good inspections, all the builders there. It's a no-brainer. Go for it. This is something that needs to happen. First step. If that's it.
I think that's it. Thank you so much, Gail, for your presentation, and we hope to see everyone next week.
Yes, you will, because you need to know when you need a different sized piece of equipment, huh? That's when we'll learn. Teaser.
Exactly. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
Thanks, Gail.
You're welcome.